Hello, hello, I'm MrShine, back once more for the conclusion of my Mage arena run. In my last video I encountered a beauty. No, I'm not talking about a pretty lady. I'm talking about this wonderful Mage deck. Although I suppose I could describe it like I would a pretty lady. The deck had it all. Ice in her veins, a sexy curve, a fiery personality, and of course, 3 big boulder fist ogres. The only thing I was lacking was a fireball or 10, but with a deck like this one, you only have so many slots, so it's not the end of the world. I figured I'd breeze into the upper ranks of the arena and have a good shot at a 12-win deck. Too bad I only won 4. Yes, you heard me right. This deck went 4-3. But MrShine, how is this possible, you might say? I admit I was shocked myself, and may have had a brief existential crisis when I suffered my 3rd loss. Well, my deck had 3 critical weaknesses to it, and all of them got exploited in my losses, which I'll be going over in a moment. The first weakness is my early game. But MrShine, you might say again, that's not true. You had 4 playable 2-drops and 3 2-mana removal spells. Surely you should have owned the early game. It turns out, however, that Frostbolts, while great, are reactive by nature. As much as it might be satisfying to chuck a snowball at your opponent's face on turn 2, you really want to save these cards to clear minions in most cases. If your opponent finds a different way to use their turn 2, however, you're stuck in an awkward position if you're waiting to Frostbolt something. The second weakness was perhaps too much late game. While I did have a strong curve, I had triple ogres and triple flame strikes, and a Sunwalker, representing about a quarter of my deck that wasn't playable until at least turn 6. Usually this would just be a bit on the steep end, but there were times where they really bogged my hand down with unplayable cards. The final weakness is simply the fact I'm a mage and don't have access to healing, and had very little in the way of taunt. Now, this isn't something I did wrong. In fact, most taunts are generally poor quality minions, but rather this is a general weakness of my deck. If the opponent is highly aggressive and I don't have the necessary answers, I can end up taking a great deal of pain. All of these situations came back to bite me during this run, attributing to my 4-3 outcome. Before moving forward, however, it's important to remember one of the arena's golden rules. Even the best players lose an average of 1 out of every 4 games. This is something I tend to forget because I take losses quite hard and personally, but reminding yourself of this rule from time to time will go a long way towards keeping a level head and avoiding going on tilt. The arena is messy and unpredictable. Sometimes your opponent will have all the answers, and sometimes they'll play crazy cards that happen to work perfectly given a particular board state. The best you can do is play each turn as well as you can, and even if you execute flawlessly, you're still going to lose a quarter of the time. Don't beat yourself up too badly if the deck underperforms or that mage top-decked his only Pyroblast for the win. Getting worked up will almost always hurt more than it will help, since your thought process may be clouded by all the salt, and you'll end up making more misplays. With my public service announcement out of the way, let's move on to the first game of the run. In my first game I started the game with a curve, but it was a pretty bad curve, since both Vaporize and Wolf Rider are not cards you want to play on turn 3. I sent everything but the Frostbolt back, and immediately regretted my decision, as the hand I received in return was much, much worse. It got even more lame on turn 2 when the opponent opted to play a secret instead of a minion. My only reasonable play, even with a coin, was Hero Ability to the face, an utterly dreadful start for my deck. The Hunter followed it up with an even more sickening play, dropping a Harvest Golem that wasn't clearable with my Frostbolt, unless I wanted a coin hero ability. The downside of that play is it meant I was forced into playing the Dark Iron Dwarf on the following turn, and with a huge curve I had in my hand, I thought it was better to make my play on turn 4, and then coin out a 6-drop on turn 5. This of course meant that I effectively passed turn 1, 2, and 3. I'll save you the grief at the end, but basically my early game slump forced me into playing reactively for the duration. I was forced to Flame Strike repeatedly when I had no board to capitalize on it, and the Hunter was able to deadly shot a lone Sunwalker and draw a Huffer at the very end. It was an ugly game from start to finish, mostly due to the fact I had no playable options in the early game, while my opponent was able to continue heaping on the pressure. Unfortunate, but one that can primarily be chalked up to bad luck post-mulligan. In the second game, I was rewarded with a far better opening hand. Removal and a solid 3 and 4 drop. I felt pretty good about what I had. The theory was I could remove their 2-drop and then have the option of coining out a water elemental on turn 3, which is a huge threat to any class and especially to weapon classes like the Rogue. The downside for me was, like the Hunter, the Rogue did not play a 2-drop, so my Frostbolt was dead and I decided to coin out the Scarlet Crusader. Not incredibly strong since the Rogue had a weapon, but he would be forced to take at least 6 damage if he wanted to spend 2 turns to ping the Crusader. And since I had great removal options on my turn to follow up the turn 3 with a Frostbolt and Arcane Missiles in hand, I thought it was worth making the play. Yet disaster struck once again. Instead of the rogue playing something on the board, he simply removed with a Backstab Perditions combo, and I was stuck wasting away a turn 3 that would have been much better spent playing a minion. 2 games in a row I was forced to make awkward early game turns due to my opponent's lack of minion drops, and the game quickly spiraled out of control from there. The ultimate insult to injury was a head crack that ended up finishing me off after I was brought to very low health. That spelled my doom and gave me a 0-2 start. The next 4 games were back up to speed. I crushed a Mage and a Druid, struggled with a Shaman but pulled it out due to Flame Strikes and Ogre powers, and made a huge glaring misplay against a Druid when I failed to self-ping my Amani Berserker on turn 4. Seriously, I don't know what on earth I was thinking here, sorry about that. In either case, I wound up being 4-2 heading into my next match. I'll break this one down turn by turn so we can witness my demise in slow-mo. During the mulligan, I sent back the Ogre and kept the Wolf Rider. Keeping the Rider was questionable, but I learned from the past defeats that I'd rather this deck play a bad 3-drop as opposed to no 3-drop. What I get instead is alright. Certainly much better once I got a Water Elemental to play on curve. Turn 1. I don't Arcane Missiles to the face because I'm not Dennis. The difference between a 30 HP rogue and a 27 HP rogue is effectively 0, so I don't want to burn a card to do nothing. Turn 2. With nothing on the board, I play the Brewmaster. Rogue with coin is dangerous here, however, since she can backstab or coin out an SI7 agent, but I'm left no choice but throwing something out and see what they have. Turns out they do have a backstab, but I'm fortunate in that the only follow-up from the rogue is to summon a dagger. This is a perfect situation for my Acolyte of Pain to saunter onto the board and dare the rogue to deal with it. Turn 4. Deal with it she did, as Spellbreaker ends up being one of the best counters to an Acolyte of Pain. My options were to go off curve with a Wolf Rider, or play a Water Elemental and let the Spellbreaker take the 1-3 for free. I ended up going with the Water Elemental because it frees up turn 5 where I can Wolf Rider and ping, or Gurabashi Berserker. The Water Elemental remains a priority target for the rogue, and the 6 HP means he'll need to use a variety of answers if he wants to kill it this turn. Worst case is it's a 1-for-1, and likely will be able to freeze the rogue or eat up another card. Turn 5, the rogue takes an Acolyte of Pain for free and I'm left with a difficult choice. My options are to Wolf Rider and ping, Wolf Rider and Arcane Missiles, or simply Gurabashi Berserker. Hitting face with the Water Elemental was also very important at this time since the rogue has a variety of options with Deadly Poison and Assassin's Blade to utilize the face for some big damage or removal. I ended up going face with the Water Elemental and simply playing the Gurabashi. Reason being was the rogue would need to trade into the Water Elemental anyways, and Wolf Rider Missiles or ping did not guarantee a clear unless I ran my Elemental into the Gnomish Inventor, something I did not think was worth doing when I had a chance to freeze the rogue's weapon. Turn 6. The rogue takes the trade as I expected and busts out a Ventrico Mercenary, a hulking turn 5 minion. My unbuffed Gurabashi Berserker is no match for that beast, and my hand has no great ways to make use of my 6 mana. I could get lucky with an Arcane Missiles to kill the Inventor and deal 1 damage to the Ventrico, which would allow me to ping my Gurabashi and trade, but then I'd be stuck with just enough mana to play the Wolf Rider, a terrible play on an empty board versus a rogue with a dagger out. Another option was to kill the Inventor and cast Vaporize. Not terrible given the minion on the board, but it would also open myself up to the rogue trading the Ventrico into my Berserker, and playing a small minion that could act as Vaporize bait. I ended up going with a Gnomish Inventor play because my hand was awkward and not well equipped to directly answer the Ventrico. I also had 3 Frostbolts in my deck, one of which would have served as a great card to cast on the Ventrico, since it prevents an attack and keeps the minion's drawback in play for 1 more turn. Sadly, it draws me an extra Flame Strike instead, but I think it was worth a shot. Turn 7. The rogue casts Deadly Poison on an Assassin's Blade, representing 25 damage over 5 turns. That's craziness, and what's worse, the board is terrible for Flame Strike. I only have a few minions in hand, so my options are basically to play Scarlet Crusader and Vaporize, or Scarlet Crusader and Wolf Rider. I opted to play Vaporize because I think the Wolf Rider will be more flexible later, and Ventrico is a good enough target for me to explode. The Crusader has added value here since the rogue would need to burn a 5 damage weapon charge if she wanted to clear the Divine Shield, something I think they would find unpleasant. Turn 8, the rogue was able to Fan of Knives the Divine Shield off my Crusader, and then tried and failed at some Brewmaster knife juggling shenanigans. It puts me in a prime position to play a big late game minion, but instead I draw my third Flame Strike, an utterly terrible draw at this point in the game. One of my 3 Ogres or my Sunwalker would have been vastly better, even if they would have me facing down a 5 damage Assassin's Blade. My options were to burn the Wolf Rider in a 1-for-1 trade and leave nothing on the board, have high odds of removing the Brewmaster with Arcane Missiles and a ping, or simply ping the Brewmaster and pass turn. I go for the latter because the Brewmaster is food for Flame Strike next turn anyways, so there's no point playing another card with Arcane Missiles when the Brew is a dead panda walking. Still, this is an utterly terrible turn for me, and I was very sad I had no good plays here. Turn 9, I'm 1 mana shy from using the Wolf Rider and a Flame Strike to clear the board, which means my Flame Strike here is pretty lousy. Still, it's really the only option I have available to me. Turn 10. The rogue's use of Conceal here is absolutely crushing. Whereas before I had a Wolf Rider and Flame Strike to clear pretty much anything that was dropped, now I have no way of getting rid of the Ogre the Mage has hiding in the shadows. I can do nothing but Flame Strike again to avoid the 4 damage from the Archmage, and hope I can find a way to survive a few more turns. Turns out the rogue had another Deadly Poison and an Eviscerate, so I take the finishing blow and drop my final match. So with that, we end up a 4-3. I do think bad luck played a large role in the losses, since my deck turned on me at poor times, and my opponents often had the answers they needed to make my clears more difficult than they otherwise could have been. Even the reward was uninspiring, giving me a plain card. So too was my pack uninspiring, giving me a standard 4 commons and a rare. Sad, sad days. Well, that's enough bumming you out for one day. Next time we'll take the final hero of my Arena Quiz series with a Paladin. And I hope I'm not speaking out of turn when I say I've saved the best for last. If you've enjoyed this video and want to see more, check out more content at HearthstonePlayers.com and subscribe to the YouTube channel for weekly videos. You can also check out my personal YouTube channel if you want to see other gaming content. As always, I've been MrShine, and I'll see you next time!